Today we are going to continue our conversation about inventory. We have been talking a lot about inventory and how critical inventory is for job costing, for accurate financial reporting, and so forth. We talked about how the chart of accounts relates to inventory. The inventory type is really important. Today we're going to talk about reordering inventory and the various systems that are available to reorder inventory parts and manage the flow of inventory back into the company. Let's start by opening an item, and we'll talk about the reorder points. Here I am looking at an item, an inventory part, and because it's a physical item, an inventory part is a physical item, meaning it's not a service, it's something we stock. Same with serialized. You're going to have the ability to set up, in addition to warehouses, you have the ability to set up bins and reorder points. So let's look at those. If you click that button, this form opens up and it will show you all active warehouses. Within each warehouse, you can identify what bin this item is stored in. So if you can imagine a warehouse with rows of shelves, shelf A, B, C, D, and then you walk down that row, 1, 2, 3. So that's D3 is the bin. And the bin could have shelves. So it's the row D, and it's the unit of shelves 3. So it's a section, if you will. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 shelves, and it's up at the top, and that might be shelf 5. Or you might do -5, something like that. And then minimum on hand. This is the minimum number that you want to have in the main warehouse. And maybe you want to have 2 of them on hand. And the maximum you ever want is maybe 10. So you're telling the software, look on the east wall. Maybe make a little note here. Look on the east wall. All right, so what you're doing is you're telling the software that I always want to have at least 2, and I never want to have more than 10. And a lot of people are confused about that 10 number. How would you use that? When you go to order it, don't order so many that we have more than 10. So when we hit our minimum on hand and you have to reorder these, don't reorder so many that we end up with more than 10. I never want more than 10. That's how you set up your reorder points, and you can set those up by item, by warehouse. And be sure to point out to people that a truck is a warehouse if it's not obvious to them or you don't think they know, because a lot of people hear the word warehouse and think, gosh, I wish we could do this by truck. That'd be great. Well, you can see the truck number, so I'm making it obvious, but a lot of people don't realize that. And you can have multiple warehouses. You might have location 1, location 2. So we might have a Kansas City, Missouri warehouse. We might have a Kansas City, Kansas warehouse. We might do a lot of business in Blue Springs. So we go out to Blue Springs and we rent one of those monthly rental places, and we fill it full of inventory. And the guys that work out in Blue Springs, they go replenish their truck from that little rental place. There's plenty of companies that do that. They have those rental places, and they send a courier, one of their employees, they send a courier out there to replenish it. He puts them in the truck, drives out there, and replenishes that little rental place. So in our sales demo, we might even do that. We might put in rental facility, A2 or Bonner Springs or Blue Springs or something like that. That's how you set up the reorder points. And again, you can do that by item. Now, it's telling me that I've changed the total minimum, which is going to trigger a reorder. Am I sure I want to do that? Yes. Talk about that in a minute. Now, if I go to the inventory tab, I can see what we have on hand, available quantity, etc. We've all seen that before. And that is the reorder points. Any questions on reorder points? All right, I'll save my work. Now, I have people out in the field selling parts. How do I know what they've been selling? There's many different ways to know what's been sold, but one of the go-to reports would be under company items, and we would go to inventory sales activity. Now, others can do this. We have other ones here. Others can do this, but we'll go to inventory sales activity, and we can pick a date range. Usually the date range is today, yesterday. So typically it's going to be yesterday. I'm in a demo database, so I'll pick a date range of like a month, so I'm sure I pick up some activity. But typically what you're doing is you're finding out what was sold today or yesterday. So it's 6 p.m., you might run this report to get things ready for tomorrow. Or you might run the report at 6 a.m. to get things ready for this morning. What this report will do is it'll show you who's been selling what. So you'll be able to look at each truck, and you might do this truck by truck, warehouse by warehouse. What you'll be able to do is you'll be able to see what's been sold, and you can replenish those items. And how would you replenish them? You might go to your warehouse and start pulling those items. Typically what you do is you stock your warehouse. You don't stock your trucks. You stock your warehouse from your suppliers. And then you use your warehouse to stock your vehicles. Now, your company might do it differently. That's how we teach it. That's our best practice. And what we try to do is teach best practice, and then you can change things around to meet your own needs. So we stock our warehouse, and we use our warehouse to stock our vehicles. We typically want to have about a week of inventory in our warehouse. Now, that'll vary by company, but you want to ask yourself, how often do you want to deal with your suppliers? And it may be that your suppliers will deliver to you daily, and that'll change your mind. It may be that you have to go to your suppliers and you only want to do that weekly. And you may not have space for a week. So that can change by company. But you want to have enough inventory in your warehouse that you're not constantly out of stock and having to deal with that situation. The inventory sales activity is one of the reports that you can use to see what was sold yesterday out of each vehicle, and then you would use that report to replenish that vehicle. So you might go truck 1, truck 2, truck 3, etc. Now, there's other reports that can do it. I won't get into them because it just take time to show you every single report, but that is the common report people use. There is also a custom data view that people like. Many users find it to be very helpful, and that is called Inventory Reorder by Warehouse. This report would show you the item, the warehouse, the reorder point, how many you have on hand, etc. And then, as you know, you can go in and make your own report out of that. And we have a model for you to use in there already. We can preview it. That's a lot of data. Typically, we'd have a date range, so we wouldn't have so many pages. So check that out. Total Office Manager, is it fast? Well, it just created a 1,341-page inventory report that had to go out and look around to gather all this data and total things up. That's not bad. So there's the report. You could use it. And remember, it's customizable. I will go ahead and save this just so we can see it. Inventory, reorder, and I'll do 0, 1. And 0, 1 means I'll have different iterations of that. Click OK, and we close that. So now the next time somebody goes in here, they've got that report to choose from right there. And then they can run that one. And you can just keep making as many as you want from this data set. So the custom data view is very handy. The next thing that you will want to know when it comes to inventory replenishment is how to use the inventory replenishment form. When we open this form, it shows us a list of all the items that currently need to be ordered. So in other words, these are items that have fallen below their reorder point. If the reorder point is 2 and the available quantity is 2 or less, then it will suggest we order. Now in this demo database, I have a number of items here that might have fallen into the negative category, which they shouldn't have. You should never do that, but that happens. Let's take a look here. Available quantity is 16, or pardon me, available quantity is 6. And their reorder point is 5. So this would allow us to automatically create a purchase order so that we can get back to sufficient stocking levels. And here's how we would do that. We would first pick a vendor we want to deal with. I'll say Grainger. And then I can apply that filter. Notice I also have sales activity date range. So if I wanted to, I could pick a date range like yesterday. Remember, we just looked at a report that showed us that information. I could have come here and looked at sales activity for yesterday and then filtered it to see if I needed to reorder any of those items. An important point to remember here is this form is showing us items that are equal to or less than their reorder point. It may be that that's not what you're looking for. You might want to replace what was sold off the truck, no matter what the reorder point is. If that's the case, then you probably want to look at the report and see what was sold and give that back to them. So there's 2 ways to look at this. The vehicle needs to be restocked because items have fallen below the point, the reorder point. They're equal to or below the reorder point. Or we just want to replace what they sold. We don't care what their reorder point was. We just want to give them back what they sold. This form is showing us what has hit the reorder point. So once I apply the filter, now I'm looking at all the items that need to be ordered from Grainger. I also have the ability, though, to uncheck this box and just look at all items. And I can start going through here and figuring them out. I can have a reorder point range. I can, again, use the sales activity date range if I want to. I could filter by item category. So I can ask this form to show me items regardless of whether or not they have fallen below their reorder point. And that can be handy. So for now, though, I would click Select All. And I'll right-click or use the menu and go up to Create PO. And when I click that, it quickly makes the PO. And that's done. The PO has been made. Now, before we open up that purchase order, were there any questions about the inventory replenishment form? Okay, so let's go to vendors.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. James, just a quick question. You sorted by the vendor Granger. If you don't sort by a vendor and you want it to create a PO, will it create multiple POs for the various vendors?
It does not. It needs to do one vendor at a time.
Okay.
That is on the to-do list, by the way. There's a few features that are on our to-do list for that form, but we haven't done them yet. They're a low priority, only because very few people do inventory control, very few people use that form. So it's just a low priority at the moment. All right, so we're going to go to vendors. We're going to go to the PO list. It's a good idea to make a user filter so that you can sort out your POs. Most companies are going to have hundreds of thousands of POs. So you might want to come in here and look for POs that are opened. And we call that not closed. So those are POs that are not closed. That means that that purchase order has one or more items on it that haven't arrived yet. If a purchase order has 100 items, if 99 of them have arrived, it's still considered not closed because we're waiting on one. And if we decide to give up on that one item, we can go in and remove that one item. Or we can check the closed box. I'll show you those things. And it'll just say, okay, it's closed. And we can type in a memo, can't get that item anymore. Gave up on it. But here we're gonna want to see the ones that are not closed. We might filter by Granger to go find that. I'll just type in a few letters. And then we can go down here to double click on that PO. And that's not the right one. 146, 246. I think that one's it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so here's that PO right there. And then we can modify the PO like we're all used to. We can go in and change pricing, do whatever we need to. Now remember, you don't always know the price on a PO, so it's not unusual to have no price on a PO. Sometimes the person ordering it has no idea what the pricing is, and so they don't modify the price. Other times, it's a salesperson ordering, or maybe an owner or a principal, a general manager, something like that, and they do know the prices, and they may be on the phone with their rep negotiating the prices. So it's quite possible the prices are negotiated. Now, if that's the case, I might want to put in a note like negotiated pricing. And maybe that note also belongs up here. And what does that note mean? That note says to the person down the line in our bookkeeping department, these prices are negotiated. So keep your eye on the prices. Now, I wouldn't use that, obviously, if they're all zero, but it's possible that we are talking to them. How much are your motors? How much are your widgets? And we're putting in the prices. And this tells the person these prices are firm. They're negotiated. If there's more to say than that, then you would want to go into the vendor's contact log and make notes about this purchase order. As we know from our training, we have the ability to select jobs and work orders for job costing purposes. If we are ordering these things for a customer, a job, then we would pick that. We'd pick the work order, and we would make sure that it's marked as reimbursable, and the software will remind us to invoice somebody for this. There's a preference to automatically check that box whenever a customer is selected as well. We could type in notes if there's something that we want to say about this particular item. the technician in the field, if they're waiting on the part, they'll be able to read those notes. Those notes might come in handy because the note could say, when this arrives, you need to come pick it up and talk to dispatching about getting back out there ASAP, something like that. So with the purchase order complete, we're ready to order these items and receive them. Any questions before we do that? All right, I'm going to hit save and close. Now, just a reminder, I could also save this PO, and then I could do my item receipt after that. So let's take a look at that. I'll click save. Now that it's saved, I should have an option to create an item receipt. Right there. We didn't see it earlier because it wasn't saved. So I could skip right into the item receipt. I don't have to do it the hard way, but I'm going to do it the hard way. All right, so that is closed. Now I'll go to vendors. I'll go to item receipts. Now remember, when we receive an item, we're making it available for sale. We're acknowledging that we have taken physical custody of the items, and it becomes an asset on our balance sheet. Right now, it's just a purchase order. It's just an order. We've asked for something, but just because we asked for it doesn't mean we've got it. So we have to acknowledge when we take custody of the item, and that creates an asset on our balance sheet called inventory. That's good. Also creates a liability on our balance sheet called accounts payable. That's not so good, but we expect that. All right, now we're in the item receipt. What we could do from here is do new item receipt. We could have also gone to vendors and just did receive items or hit Control-R. When I'm doing an item receipt, I'm usually looking at a packing slip. And in training or in sales, it'd be nice to have a packing slip photo, a picture you could bring up and say, like this, see your packing slip here? Get one of your clients to take a picture and send you one. But you probably know what I'm talking about. Typically on the box, there's a packing slip, or they hand you a packing slip. It doesn't matter if they deliver it or you go pick it up. You're typically given a packing slip. So you look at the packing slip and you can see that it's from Grainger. And you may not know anything about this order. You don't know anything about the order. You only know that you have a packing slip and your job is to deal with packing slips. That's what you do. So here's the packing slip right in front of me. You can't see it. I select Grainger because it's on the packing slip. It asks me if I want to make a copy of my last transaction for this vendor. No, I don't want to do that. Then it says, okay, well, you have purchase orders for this vendor. Do you want to see them? Yes, I do. And here they are. Now, if I scroll through here, I should see that memo I put in. There it is. I can receive one or more. These are all for Grainger, so I can receive more than one. But this is the packing slip that I'm interested in, or the PO that I'm interested in for this packing slip. Most packing slips will have the PO number on them. So you can select it right there. Now there's your items. Now at this point, the packing slip may not have pricing on it. A lot of times they don't. And it came over with no pricing. And you may not fill in the pricing for these items. You may not know what those are. So it's only going to create an inventory asset equal to this amount, $414.85. It's going to enter all of these inventory items into inventory without prices. And that's okay. That happens. Someone else enters the price. But typically the prices are here. That's usually the case. Your packing slip almost always has some kind of reference number. We'll type in the reference number. If you're using our stages feature, then you might go from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, whatever is appropriate. Your job is to make sure that the packing slip has each and every item on it. That's what you're supposed to do. You may not be verifying the price, but you verify the item number and you verify the quantity. You take the packing slip and you take a pen and you check off every line item on that packing slip to make darn sure we received everything. If we did not, the packing slip should say back ordered. If it does not, then there's the phone number. You call them. Before you call the vendor, you want to open up the contact log and put in a note. So that's why you called them. You pick a topic, and you have your own topics in here, and you pick a subject, and it might be missing item. Missing item. There we go. So make notes. Get on the phone. Who'd you talk to? Called about missing part. That's not enough. Spoke to Bob. And then you tell the whole story. I'm going to be brief for training purposes, but you tell the whole story. You talk to Bob. How long did you talk to him? What's he going to do about it? What did he say he was going to do? When did he say he was going to do it? And if you need to make yourself a reminder, you can always come in here and create a reminder. Some people use phone messages as a reminder. Put in a phone message for yourself. Date it for the day he's supposed to call you, or put in a phone message to follow up with Bob. Put it on a Post-it note if you want to, but Total Office Manager does have ways of you creating reminders. You can make yourself an appointment, whatever you want. There's different tools. But you do want to tell the story. Save and close. Now, if it didn't arrive, you'll get rid of it. You'll either delete it or change the quantity to 0. I would change the quantity to 0 if you're expecting it. So change the quantity to 0. And then you have the ability to put in a note for yourself if you want to. If you don't see these columns on your software, go to Form Preferences and add them as needed. So at this point, when I hit Save and Close, the purchase order is still going to be opened because we did not receive those 2 items that we were expecting. So the PO is going to be opened. It won't be closed until we receive those items. Any questions on that? All right. Couple quick things. If you need to go look at the PO, just hit the PO button, the View PO button right there. And there's your PO. If you need to go back to that PO list, you can do that here. Don't forget, most forms have a right-click menu. Usually there's a menu button, but not always. Like this form doesn't have a menu button, but right-click on there. One thing you might want to do at this point is scan the packing slip. So click New Document Link and scan that packing slip into this vendor's document management system. I won't do that now because that's a different topic. What I do, though, want to include is a word about barcodes. At this point, if we wanted to, we could print barcodes that we attach to the items. Maybe that's part of your job. And that could be one of your stages. So stage 1 could be enter the item receipt. Stage 2, verify and make adjustments and notes as needed. Stage 3, print barcodes and apply. Print and apply barcodes. That could be stage 3. And remember, you're renaming these, obviously. So let's do barcodes. We don't have enough serial numbers entered. So we have to put in serial numbers. So let's go do that. It says 0 of 5. I'm going to type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it should be happy. Let's see. Yeah, it's happy. It's processing it. All right. So here are the barcodes. And we have the ability now to get rid of some of them. So if we don't want to print a barcode for one of these things, we don't have to. Just get rid of it. Just like that. Otherwise, you could go to options if you need to, and you could decide if you want the retail price, do you want the serial number, bin number. If you're using labels, then you could set the labels up here. I won't get into any of that right now. I'll click OK. I'll hit print, and there they are. And now you can print those and label your items. But don't forget, right-click on an item. Let's go open it, edit the item. That item that you bought probably already has a barcode on it. And it'd be nice if you could just use their barcode. But unfortunately, their barcode is not for you, it's for them. And it doesn't have your part number on it. So these items that you bought almost certainly have a barcode on them, but the barcode is for their convenience, not yours. That's so they can scan barcodes. And you want to scan barcodes too. That's when you want to consider using the Item Alias feature. What this allows you to do is go in to your vendor list on a vendor-by-vendor basis. In this case, we were talking about Grainger, and we'll enter their barcode. So I look at the box that I just got from Grainger. I just learned about the Item Alias feature. Love it. And I look at the box for Grainger, and I see their number. And I type it in. And I also have the opportunity, if I want to type in the cost of the item. That's what I pay them. And a memo. You know, like price, valid through 2020. Something like that. And I could put in a price.
Question?
So, yes.
Okay. At that point where you're entering the vendor's alias barcode, do you have the ability to scan that in to ensure no errors?
Yes, you sure do. So that allows you to take advantage of barcodes that already exist. And that's such an awesome feature. I'm always shocked when I find out people don't use that feature. They just haven't got around to it, didn't know about it. Maybe I can understand not knowing about it, but they haven't got around to it. Now, what you can't see is I have a barcode scanner in my hand. And it is a wired and a wireless, either one. And I'm going to plug it in. I'm using the wire. Now, I haven't installed any software for this barcode scanner. None. I haven't installed any software. In front of me, I have that sheet, those items that we just looked at. I printed a sheet like that. And I can go to the alias form again, and I'm holding my barcode scanner. I could just pick up the sheet and hit it. Oh, and it says it already exists. Yeah, it's right. So I can't reuse that. Now, let me show you what just happened. I'll open up Notepad. And I'll scan these barcodes. See that? Just like I'm typing. The reason why I'm able to plug this barcode scanner into my computer and not have the computer say, "What did you just do? I don't get it," is my computer thinks that the barcode scanner is a mouse or a keyboard or a keypad. It doesn't know the difference. I could have plugged in a keypad, and the operating system might have said, hang on, installing, device is ready. It wouldn't need software. It just thinks I plugged in a keyboard, a keypad, a 10 key. Doesn't know, doesn't care. And wherever my cursor is, the barcode will be. So I just scan the barcode and it puts it wherever I happen to be. So if your fingers can enter a number, a barcode can be scanned. It makes no difference what it is. None at all. Questions on that? Now I'm going to pick up, before I close this notepad, I'm going to pick up a bottle of water. There it is. So the barcode doesn't have to be your item either. It doesn't know the difference. It doesn't care. It's the same thing as if your fingers touch the keyboard. As I look around the room, I can pick up. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, James, can you go back to the item alias and scan that bottle of water?
Yeah.
Then it'll take it then, right?
Oh yeah. It doesn't know. It doesn't know what I'm doing. It's as if I use the keyboard. That's the neat thing about barcodes is a lot of people see it as way more complicated than it is, but our alias feature makes it really handy because now you can use everyone else's barcode. So we could put in an item with an item number called water, 16 for 16 ounce. We could use their part number for the water bottle. And now every time we sell water, we just scan the barcode and we're selling water. And we're using our part number for accounting purposes, but we're taking advantage of their barcode. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Do customers need to always print out their own barcodes? Because if they use the vendor's barcode, the vendor can just change their barcode at any time, thus making your old barcodes obsolete. So it seems like it would be hard to manage. So, or would you suggest that it's best if people print off their own barcodes? So whenever they get the things out the packing, they're looking at the packing slip, they go and they print out barcodes and slap it on the parts.
I would prefer that they don't print out their own barcodes. It's been my experience that vendors don't change their part numbers.
Okay.
A part number can become obsolete and replaced by another part, but they typically don't change part numbers ever.
Okay.
Here's one for you, James, where a company buys a box of 50 widgets and the barcode on the box from the supplier represents 50 widgets, but they take them out of the box, they put them on the shelves, or they stock them, and the individual parts inside the vendor's packaging do not have barcode labels on.
Yeah, so in that case, they could go ahead and put barcodes on every item, or what they could do is they could put a single barcode on the box. So imagine a truck, and in that truck, you've got RBM relays, little relays, RBM relays. They're small, but you want to track them. So rather than put a label on every one of them, you could put a label on the box and just scan the box, the bin, when you take one out. You could also have a cheat sheet like the grocery store does. And for items, for certain items, you could have barcodes printed on a piece of paper. And then you can scan those items off that piece of paper. And by the way, it's another topic, but what you described is a great time to use the unit of measure. We buy one of them, but when I receive it, I want to receive 50. and I sell them individually. So we create a unit of measure for that. Other questions? So just remember, the barcode scanner doesn't well, let me change what I was going to say. The software doesn't care where the number came from. It's all happening through the operating system. The operating system receives input from a keyboard, from a mouse, from a keypad, and those devices, among others, can be wired or wireless, as you know, and a barcode scanner is no different. And so the operating system and the software, they don't care. They don't know any different. They don't know how the number got there. So no matter what software you're in, and you saw me in Notepad, plain old Notepad, no matter what software you're in, it's going to receive that barcode once it's scanned.
And just a reminder too, James, that when you're at the point of an item receipt and it's asking you for serial numbers, you can use your barcode scanner there as well to scan the serial numbers in.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Good point. So I could have opened that form and used my barcode scanner here too. And that would have made it faster, potentially. Certainly would have helped with accuracy. So now, even without prices in here, when I hit save and close, all of these items are added to inventory. Our next job is to stock them. We put them on the shelves. Now we have trucks that need to be replenished. And remember, this is how it all started. We have guys out there selling parts, guys and gals out there selling parts off their trucks, and we need to replenish the trucks. And now we have the items to do it. Hopefully, we're replenishing the trucks from the warehouse and we're replenishing the warehouse from the supplier. But the last thing to mention is that we need to go gather up all the items for each truck and put those in a box or a sack or a bag, whatever you choose. So imagine I'm restocking truck 101. I grab everything from 101 using the custom data view or using the report we looked at earlier, the inventory sales activity report or other reports. There's plenty. I look to see what that truck sold, and I walk around grabbing all those items. And I put them in a box, and I write on that box 101. I might even have a reusable plastic bin with 101 permanently marked on it. It might be a bag of some kind. Now I need to get those parts to that technician. Hopefully, they're not in a hurry to get their parts. We want to make sure the truck has a week or more of parts on it. And what we put on those trucks can change from season to season, right? We want to make sure they've got a good solid week of parts on their truck. And what we do is we give them those parts when they come in for some other reason, like a meeting. Maybe they come in for their weekly meeting. Maybe they come in to drop off checks. Whichever happens first, grab your parts. And we might do that every day. And there might be 3 days worth that they haven't picked up yet. But it just so happens they're coming in for some reason. Drop off checks, cash, or coming in for a meeting. And they look and, oh, there's my parts. And they leave with their parts. And their truck is now restocked. The key is to have a good stocking plan. Just like you ran a grocery store or a hardware store or any small mom and pop POS, you want to pay a lot of attention to what you're stocking. And you don't want to put a lot of items on the shelf that don't move fast, but you want to get plenty of items that do move fast. So you create a stocking list, and that changes by technician, doesn't it? By what they do, commercial people versus residential, plumber versus electrician. One thing that could help you is to go into your invoice item list and create a smart list. And the smart list could be the truck stock for Bob, for Fred, or whoever. So you'll notice I have a truck stock list 102, and I click on it. That's everything that I want in their truck. Or truck 103. That's everything I want on that person's truck. So that would allow me to create a list for FYI and create a list of items that belong on their truck. Smart List is another feature that a lot of people aren't aware of and don't use. It's one of those features that we spend a lot of money creating because we're picky about our software, but it's not flashy, it's not sexy, it's not Service Titan sexy, but it really matters a lot. But it's the kind of thing that you do when you really care about the workflow inside your software. Questions so far?
Yeah, James, can you follow that through now that we have a pick list of what was sold yesterday? Our warehouse guy has gone and grabbed those materials off the shelf. Now we have to transfer those in Tom to that warehouse, to that van.
Yes. Yeah. And by the way, a lot of people don't use the multiple warehouse feature. They don't use that feature. And so they wouldn't have to do that part. But for those who do, you have several mechanisms available to you. Number one, you could have created a PO for each vehicle. Now, that's extra work, isn't it? Not really, because if you had done that, then you would have the ability to receive those items. Receive items. Let's do a new one. You'd have the ability to go pick the warehouse, pick it first. Now, when you add items, let's do American Standard this time. Duplicate, no. Purchase order, yep. So let's grab some info. Now what it did is it picked that truck. So you can receive the items into that vehicle directly if you wanted to. Now you might say, well, hold on, I thought we were stocking our main warehouse. And it's true, you are. I'm just pointing that out. That was one way to do it. If it's going to go straight to the vehicle, or if it's going to go to the warehouse where it sits in a pile, and then we get it to that vehicle, you might want to consider just directly receiving it into that vehicle. Otherwise, there's other tools, and I won't go into every one of them, but we have quite a few. You'll find them under the inventory adjustment menu. So here we can do an inventory review adjustment. And this allows us to filter out by a certain warehouse. Actually, that's the wrong form. I want to correct myself. That is when you need to change quantity on hand. You're better off using a form like that. You would probably want to use the inventory transfer form. This is my go-to. And you have several actions. Warehouse transfer. Now you can pick the items that are on order and transfer them from one warehouse to the other. And it's simple. You just pick the item. You pick the existing warehouse from and the one you want it to go to. And when you're finished, you hit save and close, and it transfers all of those items from one place to the next. You can also do them individually, one at a time. So you have different ways of doing it. You could even go back and modify the item receipt. The item receipt could have been for the main warehouse, and you would have the ability to open up the item receipt and change all of them to the new warehouse or some of them. So let's see what that would look like. You open up the item receipt. They all went to truck 1. Could have been the main warehouse. You pick another one. and it says, hey, you changed the warehouse. Do you want to apply that change to only the ones that don't have a warehouse picked, or all of them, or you want to cancel? I'll say all. That allows you to go change the item receipt after the fact if you want to. Now, I was asked online what permission is needed to ungrade the inventory review form. Here, it is two things. If you don't have this available, it's because you don't have the permission to see that feature. So you would have to go into security, or chances are you have a certain preference turned on that makes that feature unavailable to you. And I won't go into that because I'm opening up a can of worms that would take many minutes to explain. But there are a set of inventory features that make this unnecessary or unusable, and it grays it out for that reason. And I was asked if there's a help topic. I hope so. I haven't seen it in a long time. I haven't needed to look at it. Hopefully there's a help topic that would explain that. And if there isn't, we should make one. So we should be building help topics like that. Now, typically there's not a help topic on why that's grayed out, because that would be a lot of help topics. Typically it's a help topic that would be covering item receipts or some other inventory question, and it might explain that. But you typically won't find help topics on very precise questions like that. Any other questions? So that's how we can transfer those from one place to the other. And again, there's other opportunities in the program. We just won't cover that. One thing I wanted to mention is the item lookup. Everywhere in the software where you had the ability to pick an item, like a work order, an item receipt, you name it, anytime there's an item selector, there's also a lookup feature. This allows you to very quickly go in and grab items. We have a company that complained about how long it takes to put a serialized item on an invoice. You got to go pick a serialized item. You got to do it 15 different times. You know, we have 15 of them. It takes forever. Well, one thing that they didn't realize is you could go in here and find the serialized item. And you can do that. And then they're all on there. Now, the next complaint could be, I got to go find the serial number for all those now. Well, come on. Can't do everything for you. You're going to have to go pick the serial number yourself. The software is not going to do that. But at least you didn't have to put those items on there by hand. You know, go find the item, and then go find the item. Imagine if there are 5,000 in here. Another nice thing about the lookup is it has a barcode scanning mode. So we will put this in all, and we will check this box. With that checked, it's ready to receive a barcode scan. And so I'll take my piece of paper that I had earlier, and I'll scan. And I'll scan, and I'll scan. Now, by the way, you can see it almost like typing in. Some scanners are faster than that. The one I happen to be using right now is doing it slow, but it actually has a preference in it to speed it up if I wanted to. So here I could be doing an item receipt, a purchase order, a work order. Maybe it's a work order. And we're filling Jonathan's truck full of stuff for a job. Well, I have all those things in front of me and I'm just scanning away. and I'll put all those items into the work order. And then he goes out and does his job and brings back a few items he didn't use. And I put those items back on the shelf and I take them off the work order. So let me say that again. Jonathan's going out to do a job and I'm creating a work order for him. In front of me, I have a pile of things. And I go into that work order. I go to the Items tab. I go to Lookup, and I start scanning all of those items into the work order. Then he brings a couple of them back. And one of my jobs, I'm the warehouse guy, by the way, nice to meet you. One of my jobs is to put the items back he didn't need. And when I do that, I remove them by deleting them from the work order. And I can make notes of what I did, and I can have a stage indicating what I did. So I was supposed to do that. Now that I've taken those off, when people go to create the invoice, don't forget, you have the ability to assign work orders to the invoice. And when you do that, there are none for this job. When you do that, you have the option of bringing the items over to the invoice. And it will only bring the items over that were on the work order. And the only items that were on the work order are the items that Jonathan used. So the item lookup feature takes advantage of that barcode scanner. Now, if you want to, you can put your cursor in here and scan a barcode. But you still have to use your mouse because it doesn't go down to the next line. We don't know if you're done yet. So we don't go to the next line. You have to do it yourself. So typically you'd use the lookup. Any questions?
Yes, I apologize, but when you were at the point where items were taken out of inventory to a work order, and now you, the warehouse guy, are removing some from that work order, I missed how we're telling. When we go into lookup and scan those items, is it not going to try to put those items onto the work order? Where was the delete from?
So what I was talking about is when you create a work order, one of your options is to go ahead and put the items on the work order. That would be common for like an installation, an ongoing job, your work for the day.
Correct.
So I'd put those items on here, and I'd use the lookup in a barcode scanner if I wanted to. And then at some point, Jonathan brings that vehicle back and says, yeah, I didn't use these. And he hands me those items. I can go to that work order and get rid of those items. So the work order,
you're getting rid of them there by just clicking and deleting the item there. But what if you gave him 10 widgets and he's returning 2? You would have to manually go in here and adjust the quantity, not utilizing the barcode scanner. It would be a manual adjustment, would it not?
Yes. Now, keep in mind, if I'm removing items, I'm probably not needing a barcode scanner for anything. Yeah. What I'm doing is I'm either hitting the red X or I'm changing the quantity.
Okay, I apologize, James. That's where I was confused. I thought you were indicating that the items that he handed back to you that he didn't use, you could barcode scan those and remove those from the work order, and so I misunderstood.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I might have misspoke. So that's what you're typically doing is you're opening up a work order like this and you're saying, okay, he didn't need that, and he only used one of these. Keep in mind also that from the PO, you could have got a head start on this job. You're the warehouse guy or gal. You could have gone to menu, create what? You could have created from here a work order. One work order or per customer. And what that'll do is that'll put all these items on the work order. So you could have a single work order with every item on it, or you could have multiple work orders created depending on how many customers you have in here, how many customer jobs are selected. And remember, it's going to take all the items and put them on the work order because it doesn't really know what you want. So when that work order gets created, you'll obviously have the opportunity to get rid of things, but getting rid of things is way faster than adding them because you just hit the red X and have your finger ready on the enter key. And you just click and hit enter, click and hit enter, click and hit enter, get rid of them. So that allows you to create the PO now, or pardon me, create the work order from the PO. You can future date the work order if you need to. The work order is unscheduled. So the work order isn't bothering anybody. It hasn't shown up on anybody's schedule yet. But if the boss tells you that's your job, then you can create the work order from the PO. And remember, you can use the stage feature to keep track of all this. If somebody says that Total Office Manager is hard to use, the one thing I ask them is it hard to use or is it time consuming? And they might think about what I meant just a minute, and they might say, well, it's hard to use. And then you've heard my metaphor about the large building. If it's a building with 545 rooms, and we have about 545 forms, right? I'll call them rooms. Well, then it isn't hard to use. It's just big, and you have a lot of options. But I'd like to think of those options as opportunities. The software gives you a lot of opportunities. So it isn't so hard to use. You just have a lot of opportunities. It's like a giant menu at the restaurant. You go to the Cheesecake Factory and say, wow, it's hard to order here. Why is it hard to order? You have a giant menu, hundreds of choices. I'd like to think that you have a lot of opportunities to order what you want. Now, what if they said it's slow to use? It just takes a lot of time to do my job. Then I'd encourage you to get training, because chances are I can provide you with tips on how to get around faster. Like, for example, someone once asked me about a situation that was time consuming for them. And I said, did you know you can just create your work orders from here? Oh, wow, really? Somebody once said it takes a lot of time to add all the items to an invoice. And I showed them the reimbursables feature. I showed them the assign work orders feature. Well, it'll take a lot of time to create those work orders. Then I showed them how to make a work order from a PO, and they're like, oh, wow. Oh, you saved my life. Sometimes it's just a matter of showing somebody a feature, and it makes a big difference. And inventory control is definitely one of those areas. Any final questions?
I think the answer to this is going to be no, but I just want to verify. So if the receiver wants to add all those items to a work order, however, the CSR has already created a work order for the installation date, he can't choose and say assign all these to a specific. It has to be a create new that it's going to pull them into.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
That's what I thought. Okay.
If it helped, if it helped, you know, they could put the work order that was created right in front of them, and then they could make a work order from the PO and then duplicate all the info if it was a time saver. Like if it was a lot of items, it could be easier for them to create a whole new work order. And if they have to reuse the number, then what you can do is is put an A in here and save it. Now 1197 becomes available. Renumber the other work order to 1197, save it, and then you could cancel this work order or delete the work order.
Perfect.
So lots of tips like that. Lots of tips like that. Remember, people might say it's hard to use or it takes a long time to use it. And we have the ability to address that. It's really all just explaining the flow. How does it all work? And I encourage you, again, to think about all the reports and all the forms and features as opportunities, not a burden. All right, so that is it. If there's no final questions, that's all I have for you on inventory control.